Are there any questions? Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence. Minister, yesterday you claimed domestic violence rates were down across the Territory, but the reality is quite different to the story that you told the Parliament. The latest crime statistics show that 8 months to August, compared to the same time last year, 67.5% of all assaults were associated with domestic violence, up 2.6%. In Darwin, domestic violence was up 7.4%. In Palmerston, it was up 9.5%. In Katherine, it was up 4.6%. In Tennant Creek, it was up 4%. And in Nhulunbuy, it was up 31%. Minister, it is beyond belief that you stood in the House yesterday and claimed to have brought rates of domestic violence down in the Northern Territory. But that's not really the point. The point is that you still have not released your domestic, family and sexual violence roadmap for the Northern Territory. We are being asked about it time and time again across the Northern Territory, and the sector cannot understand why you will not act on this incredibly pressing issue. Minister, rather than stand here and make misleading statements to the House about domestic violence, when will you act and when will the roadmap be ready?
Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the Leader of the Opposition for the question. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about how amazing and what incredible results we have seen come from the work being done by the circuit breaker team in Alice Springs. So the information that was presented to Parliament yesterday, Madam Speaker, was that across the Territory from January to August 2025 compared to January to August 2024, there has been a 1% decrease across the Territory in domestic violence assaults. That is incredible, Madam Speaker. But what is most incredible, Madam Speaker, is the fact that the majority of the decrease has occurred in Alice Springs, where there has been a 17% decrease in domestic violence assaults for the period January to August 2025 compared to the period January to August 2024. And, Madam Speaker, the most significant change in that environment since that period was looked at is the delivery of the Roots Causes program circuit breaker, which is working with families to make sure that the cycle of violence is broken at its root and that kids have given the best possible opportunity to live the life they deserve, and that their families are supported and given every opportunity to reduce the risk of harm in those households. So, Madam Speaker, I am incredibly proud of the work that the circuit breaker team have done. They have been working tirelessly since December, and their work is paying off. And we expect, and as I also spoke about yesterday, Madam Speaker, when you look at month-on-month results from April to August across the Territory, we are similarly starting to see decreases. So yes, there was that period at the beginning before the programs really kicked in where we were still seeing incidents of domestic violence that quite frankly were unacceptable, but we are now starting to see a shift. The work is paying off, and quite frankly, Madam Speaker, I would have thought that those on the other side would be celebrating that, not calling it out. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Blaine, what is your question? Silence.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, Arafura's Nolans Rare Earths project in Central Australia continues to demonstrate just how important the Northern Territory is to our nation's economic and strategic future. With growing international interest and $400 million US in new investment earmarked, including from the United States, Nolans is shaping up to be the most significant critical minerals project in the country. Chief Minister, can you update the Assembly on how this project will create local jobs, reinforce our position as a key player in global supply chains, and why the rest of the country should never underestimate the value of the Northern Territory?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Member for Blaine. Great question, and you're absolutely right. We should not be underestimated. We should be celebrated for what the Territory can do for the security of this nation and for our allies. And the deal struck by Prime Minister Albanese and, of course, President Trump is a really significant step forward for the Northern Territory. Member for Blaine, I know you're excited about this project as a born and bred Territorian, and we've certainly, the CLP has been backing this in for the better part of a decade. But to get it to this point really puts the Northern Territory on the national stage for all of the right reasons, on the global stage, I should say, for all of the right reasons. And so it's a vote of confidence in our capacity, it's a vote of confidence in our capability and our geostrategic importance in the region, something that we continue to go to Canberra on. I've been to Japan, we'll head to the United States next year to really reinforce what it is the Territory has to offer this country in terms of rare earth and mineral security, food security, energy security, and of course strategic national security. Now, this investment is around that $400 million mark. We've seen $100 million being reported by Export Finance Australia, and then of course we've seen that $300 million from the Export-Import Bank of the United States. And we're really hoping that this final push of funding is going to help deliver that final investment decision that Arafura need to make, that we want to see made, so that the Territory can benefit. The significance of this project should not be underestimated. Not only will the Territory benefit from 600 construction jobs, 350 operational jobs, but this is a project 135 kilometres out from Alice Springs, very close. Of course, the community of Aileron and a number of other fantastic communities in the Barkly seek to benefit from the real jobs on country that Arafura will present to Territorians, the royalties that flow from it, but the focus on the Territory to deliver for our country, to deliver for our allies, as we know we can. And we have been ignored for too long, and I said at the Bush Summit, ignore us at your peril. Ignore us at your own peril. We can deliver for this country and our allies, and this is a very strong example of that, Member for Blaine. And so I thank you for your keen interest in this. Rebuilding our economy has been a very core focus for us, and we know that when it comes to making the Territory a better place to do business, we are doing everything we can. But the scale of this investment, the way it is going to create the supply chains that we need, the growth in the business community that we need, and hopefully the expansion of population in Alice Springs is something we can celebrate. This is a good thing for the Territory, and we hope it continues to create opportunities for people now and into the future.
Leader of the Opposition, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Mining and Energy. Minister, you've told Territorians the energy system is in a dire state, sparking alarming headlines about life-threatening blackouts. Energy reform work has been underway for several years now, so which regulator or agency gave you that advice and when, Minister? And if the warning is genuine, Territorians do deserve to know who raised this alarm, and if not, why are you telling stories and spreading panic?
Minister for Mining and Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak about this. This, Madam Speaker, is another failure by the previous Labor government. Madam Speaker, as I said this morning, we have known for years now that the energy system is in crisis, and the previous Labor government failed to act. Madam Speaker. We know that there was a Gateway report which recommended something needed to be done, and it was presented to the other side when they were in government. In fact, presented to the Leader Opposition. She was the Essential Services Minister. So she read that report, Madam Speaker, and yet what did they do? Crickets. Nothing at all, Madam Speaker. They didn't even knock on the table and say, can we come and do something, Madam Speaker? They did nothing. Because, for whatever reason, they did not care about the Territorians, Madam Speaker. And it's actually a shame, Madam Speaker, that this is what they did, because they had this ridiculous policy about let's get 50% renewables by 2030. Don't care about the cost, Madam Speaker. Who cares about what Territorians are going to pay? Unlike this government, Madam Speaker, on this side, led by Leah Whanokayara, we're about offering Territorians the lowest cost electricity possible, Madam Speaker, because we're about cost of living. We know, Madam Speaker, that mums and dads out there are doing it tough. We know that the previous Labor government failed them and left us with a $15 billion worth of debt, which we are repaying, Madam Speaker.
Take your seat, Minister. What's your point of order, Opposition Leader?
110. The question was specifically about, Minister, which agency or regulator gave you the advice that there are life-threatening blackouts?
Okay, Minister, you've got plenty of time.
Madam Speaker, you don't have to have an agency. It's called common sense. Common sense, Madam Speaker. Something the previous Labor government did decide that when the power goes out, Madam Speaker, electrical items go off. Well, common sense, Madam Speaker. And if you're a vulnerable person, Madam Speaker, and you've got your health equipment plugged into the wall to the power, and the power goes out, what happens?
That's the end of that.
It goes off. Common sense, Madam Speaker. This puts vulnerable Territorians at risk, Madam Speaker. And on a serious note, Madam Speaker, this is very serious. Territorians could suffer, and it could be potential life loss because the previous Labor government failed to act. Failed to act and left us in a system which was unstable and very, very lacking infrastructure, Madam Speaker. And yet we know that the other side had the information and didn't act, Madam Speaker. So we are talking about vulnerable Territorians, our senior Territorians, our younger Territorians who are suffering a medical episode, Madam Speaker. They've gone to the doctor and they've got their treatment. Just air conditioning, Madam Speaker, for some older Territorian sitting at home. We know there's a heat wave right out now, Madam Speaker, and that is if the power goes off, the air conditioning goes off, Madam Speaker. The ceiling fans go off, Madam Speaker, and unfortunately that is going to put lives at risk, Madam Speaker. So when you ask the question about who did it, Madam Speaker, it's common sense. Common sense. If the power goes off, people's lives are at risk, Madam Speaker. We know that we're severely lacking in any foresight, Madam Speaker, to move forward. So this really goes to show, Madam Speaker, the previous Labor government failed Territorians.
Supplementary, Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, the Deputy Chief Minister has spoken about the regulator and saying that this has been the cause of why the concern is brought to the House. So can the Chief Minister, please, Deputy Chief Minister, please confirm which regulator brought this to your attention, what they said and why?
It is quite
Can
simple.
I just pause? That was pretty much the same as the first question.
You have to ask a question.
I don't think that you've asked a different question, Opposition. You asked for the regulator. Which regulator gave that advice in the first question? You're asking the same in the second question? I don't think that is a supplementary question. I'm sorry, you can have another go at a supplementary question later on in the question time, but you've asked the same question twice. So, Member for Karama, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries. Minister, in 2024, our agriculture sector contributed around $1.4 billion to the Territory economy, and the opportunities for further growth are enormous, particularly in our regional and remote areas. The latest figures released by the Department of Agriculture and Fisheries also show that cattle exports from Darwin Port have hit record highs. We know how much you value our agriculture sector and our hard-working producers and farmers, including local Malack resident David Din, who is a major mango producer. Can you please tell the House how you continue to push and develop economic growth and how it will help our critically important ag sector?
Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I know the member for Karama is committed to the agriculture because he knows it will grow the economy, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, he also knows that we are left with a $15 billion debt by the previous failed Labor government. And how are we going to do that, Madam Speaker? We are going to grow our economy and we're going to make our way out of that debt, Madam Speaker. Unlike the previous Labor government who decided that maybe tax people, they wanted to shrink the economy and raise taxes. I don't know what they're going to do, Madam Speaker. But what we are going to do and what the member for Karama is talking about is growing the economy, Madam Speaker. And we want to ensure that the agriculture remains one of the Territory's great success stories, Madam Speaker. We know that we can unlock the regional growth and without connecting our regions to the backbone, because they're the backbone, Madam Speaker, of the agricultural sector. We know we've got a very vast area of land and we want to connect it all together because agriculture is so important, Madam Speaker. Agriculture is responsible for not only the food that we eat, Madam Speaker, but it makes our economy stable. It makes sure that the people out there in the regions have got jobs and they can employ people, they can put money in the bank, they can put food on the table, Madam Speaker, and perhaps they could even pay their power bills, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the gross value of the agricultural production has increased by 34% over the past 20 years. In real terms, Madam Speaker, that's from $61 million up to $82 million in the last financial year, Madam Speaker. We know that the Northern Territory relies on agriculture, and we, as CLP government, are going to support that, Madam Speaker, as we move forward. Madam Speaker, because it means jobs, Madam Speaker. It means jobs for our region. We know the land of opportunity in the Barkly. There's a lot of agriculture out there, Madam Speaker, and we're really making sure that we support the industry, Madam Speaker, because it employed some 274,000 people in the Northern Territory in the 4 quarters, Madam Speaker, up 6.7% from the previous year. Madam Speaker, we already know we've had a great start to the export industry, Madam Speaker. The cows out of the Darwin port have gone up to more than 440,000 head of cattle exported last financial year, Madam Speaker. 440,000 head. That's eclipsing the 10-year previous of 400,000, Madam Speaker. So we're going up, Madam Speaker, making sure that we support the agriculture industry so they can go and make jobs and they can make sure our economy is stable, Madam Speaker. We're also working hard to develop sites, Madam Speaker, such as the Larrimah Agricultural Development and also the expansion of the Ord River and also the Wildman Agriculture area, Madam, near the Cashew Farm down the Arnhem Highway. Madam Speaker, we're also supporting Singleton Farm, a $500 million development in the Northern Territory to be staged over 9 years, because we know that's going to give us 1,000 jobs, Madam Speaker, over the years. So we're here to support the agriculture industry, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Member for Crummer, for the question.
Member for Gwadja, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Corrections. Minister, your government allocated just 3% of the corrections budget to domestic violence prevention and reduction programs in prisons. This week, your own Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence tried to deny that domestic, family and sexual violence rates have gone up under your watch. Can you explain why your government is deluding Territorians about addressing domestic, family and sexual violence when just 25 prisoners on a sentence of under 2 years have had access to these programs?
Minister for Corrections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank you for the opportunity to talk about these, Madam Speaker, because we know that the crime stats have gone down, Madam Speaker, right across the Northern Territory. And just to give you some example, Madam Speaker, in the Greater Darwin, house break-ins down some 38%, commercial break-ins down 25%, assaults, DV is down 2%, Madam Speaker. We know that our strategy to reduce crime is working in the Northern Territory, Madam Speaker. In the correction space, what we're doing, Madam Speaker, is unlike the previous Labor government, we're actually putting people into prison and then putting them into programs. Putting them into programs, Madam Speaker, because we want to make sure that rehabilitation, Madam Speaker, is the key to break that cycle of reoffending, Madam Speaker. Unlike the previous Labor government, who just put them away and didn't do anything with them, we are out, Madam Speaker, and making sure we do these programs to support that. For example, Madam Speaker, the anger management, the RAGE program, we've had 12 people go through that in the Berrima Centre, Madam Speaker. And we're going through the individual treatment programs. There's 8 people there. The sex offender program, 7 people through there, Madam Speaker. We know, Madam Speaker, that the rehabilitation is the key to breaking that cycle of offending and to lowering the domestic violence. And I know the Minister for Domestic Violence is working hard, Madam Speaker, and she spoke earlier today about the success that she's doing in the circuit breaker program. And so our programs are working and these rates are going down, Madam Speaker. But you remember, Madam Speaker, where were we when we started? We were starting with record high crime rates, record high domestic violence. And Madam Speaker, you have to ask yourself, why would we get there? It's because the previous Labor government had 8 years in power, 19 out of the last 20 years in power, Madam Speaker, and they failed Territorians. And in fact, Madam Speaker, some of these young offenders weren't even born when the previous Labor government came into power. Weren't even born. And I hear the other side talk about, oh, generational. These kids weren't even born, Madam Speaker, and they were born under the failed Labor government who put them through a misery and no corrections to be able to make them break that cycle of reoffending. So we're here running these programs, Madam Speaker, to make sure that we break that cycle of offending because we know how important it is, Madam Speaker, to ensure that we break that cycle because every time there's a domestic violence, Madam Speaker, there's a victim. There's not just a perpetrator, there's a victim who suffers, and they suffered at the hands of the previous Labor government, Madam Speaker. So we're going to make sure that we give those victims the rights and protections they need, Madam Speaker, to make sure they get on with their lives as well. So not only, Madam Speaker, are we focusing on breaking the cycle of reoffending, we're also supporting those victims, Madam Speaker, because that's what this previous Labor government failed to do.
Member for Goyder, what is your question?
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure. Minister, the Darwin Port services a diverse range of industries that all contribute to the Northern Territory economy and the day-to-day life of our communities. Port users have raised concerns regarding Darwin Harbour's pilotage system, an issue that's been causing serious delays for commercial shipping operators, fuel and food deliveries, and even live export movements. We know the previous Labor government ignored repeated calls from business and industry to fix this issue. Minister, can you please update the House on what steps the CLP government is taking to fix this problem, cut red tape and ensure our port can keep pace with the growing demand and industry expectations?
Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Goyder for the question, because I know that he understands the importance that the port plays in growing our economy and our economy overall moving forward. And of course, pilotage services are a very important part of managing Darwin Harbour to assist vessels move in and out of the harbour, including berthing, mooring and general vessel movements. And just to give everybody in the House and those listening in some clarity, a certified pilot usually boards the vessel to guide it or oversee its movements, and in some cases may take control of the vessel directly. And we've heard directly from many industry stakeholders, Madam Speaker, and port users who are seriously concerned about the limited availability of pilots in Darwin Harbour, to the point, Madam Speaker, where I've had to intervene on occasions, particularly around the movement of perishable goods from Darwin out into remote communities when there is pilots unavailable and goods are spoiling on berths or spoiling on ships before they make it to those communities. And of course, when a pilot isn't available, vessels can be left waiting to move, causing those delays. And Madam Speaker, these delays disrupt the delivery of essential food, as I've said, fuel supplies, and industry operators have repeatedly raised concerns about pilot shortages leaving barges stranded and, as I said, food spoiling on board instead of reaching communities that desperately need it. Delays also affect animal welfare if live animals are left waiting in difficult conditions. And we know that delays for large commercial operators, such as LNG ships and container vessels, may lead to penalties from customers and disrupt business operations. The Chief Minister recently visited Japan, where representatives of one of our key trading nations also made their concerns known about the issues with pilotage at Darwin Port. We have two options, Madam Speaker. We can either increase our pool of pilots immediately, which is not possible. Pilots take some time to train, or reduce the demand for these services required for smaller vessels, allowing our pilots to target those larger vessels. And Madam Speaker, under our existing regime, the Regional Harbour Master can issue exemptions to vessels of certain sizes and classes. Consequently, I've asked DLI to complete the necessary risk and mitigation assessments to enable the increase of the current exemption limit from 35 to 55 metres, freeing up pilots to target those larger vessels which need more oversight. This, of course, then changes, or this change will free up those pilots to focus on those larger, more complex movements. These changes will bring us into line with other jurisdictions such as Queensland, which also manage high levels of industry activity and complex demand requirements. The CLP will continue to push forward to rebuild our economy, Madam Speaker, and as port activity increases, it's vital that our operations meet what is required for the Territory.
Member for Daly, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries. Minister, the last time the Barramundi Fishery Advisory Group met was in July last year. During estimates, you said a new group would be formed this year. You also said you would be progressing your election commitment to phase out gill net fishing and talk to the industry about alternative gear for the fishing industry. Minister, the fishing sector has been left in the dark about whether you intend to meet any of your commitments. Can you please advise the House whether you have made any progress? If not, why not?
Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Daly for his question. Barramundi fishing in the Northern Territory, Madam Speaker, is a big industry. whether you're talking about commercial industry or talking about recreational, Madam Speaker. And just to refresh the House, Madam Speaker, the CLP's commitment in relation to the gillnet is phasing out the gillnets in this term of government. So that's our commitment. We are going to phase out the commercial gillnets in this term of government, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we're only just 1 year in to this term of government, Madam Speaker. And I can say we are on track, Madam Speaker, to meet our electoral commitment. Madam Speaker, we are working hard to make sure we get the balance right, Madam Speaker, because what we don't want to do, Madam Speaker, is what the previous Labor government do, is just go and make a rash decision and close something or open something or make a decision not based on the information and making sure the industry is brought along for the ride. They know what's going on, Madam Speaker, because we know how important the barramundi fishing is, Madam Speaker. We know how important it is for the rec fishing and the commercial fishing, and we need to ensure that we get the balance right. So, Madam Speaker, to answer the question, in fact, right now, Madam Speaker, I've got some, a request across my desk about alternative gear type, and we're working with that proponent to make sure that he comes up with an idea that he can go out and maybe line fish or go out and do something other than gill netting to be able to make sure that there's still a commercial industry, Madam Speaker, here. So we are progressing, Madam Speaker. We're dealing with proponents out there in the Northern Territory to convert themselves from gill netting into a different sort of fishing on their own application, Madam Speaker. Because right now we haven't changed any rules, Madam Speaker, in relation to commercial netting, commercial fishing. What we are doing, Madam Speaker, is working in the industry to get it right, Madam Speaker. We are going to set up an advisory body, and I understand the makeup of that body has been made up and they're going to meet in the next month or so, Madam Speaker, because we want to get this right, Madam Speaker. So we're working on two things at once, Madam Speaker, working on how we're going to phase out the gill nets and meet our commitment, and also working with proponents to ensure that they can go and transfer to different types of gear if they see fit, Madam Speaker. It's a matter for them, Madam Speaker, how they're going to go and do it, but we are here to support them and make sure if they want to make that transition, we're here to help them go through that transition, Madam Speaker. So this is about getting the balance right, Madam Speaker, and ensure that we give everyone an exit if they choose to with dignity about the commercial gill netting, and they can use alternative gear. So our department is working with those proponents, Madam Speaker, and like I said, I've got someone right now on my desk, Madam Speaker. We're working with that proponent to go and use some line fishing other than gill netting, Madam Speaker. So we're sure we're getting it right, but I can assure the Territorians we're going to meet our commitment. Within this term, we're going to phase out gill netting. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Casuarina, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for Minister for Education and Training. Minister, our government is focused on rebuilding the Territory's economy and creating real opportunities to improve the quality of life for all Territorians. Minister, we know that not every young person will choose to pursue university after completing Year 12, and many are looking for practical and hands-on pathways into the workforce. Minister, can you please update the House on how our government is supporting those young Territorians by expanding access to vocational education and training, and the steps being taken to boost participation in skills training across the Territory?
Minister for Education and Training.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Casuarina for his question. And I know that as he has a young family, he wants a bright future for his family when they grow up and go to a school here in the Territory and get a great career pathway, no matter it is what they choose, Madam Speaker. The Chief Minister recently launched our new economic strategy, and the strategy aims to rebuild our economy and lays out specific priority areas, actions and annual targets. And priority area 2 in the economic strategy is building a bigger, better workforce. And our government is committed to supporting and upskilling Territorians. And we view vocational education and training, or VET as we call it, as a tertiary pathway. And I was just at lunchtime out with the member for Fanny Bay, Lorizio, to the High Achievers Lunch at Darwin High School. And whilst those 59 students, Madam Speaker, had done their ATAR and were extremely high achievers, many of them, the teachers had said, had done a Cert 3 as well, which was really interesting. And that's they've chosen both pathways, so it doesn't just have to be one or the other. They've actually done that together as well. But recently we also went out and opened up the Trade Training Centre at the Casuarina campus. The new facility will significantly increase the training capacity at CDU TAFE, enabling us to meet the growing demand for a skilled and agile workforce. It will play a crucial role in addressing some shortages within the construction industry. And as I say, as a previous tradie, we need more tradies out there on the ground, Madam Speaker. And it is a great pathway into a very lifelong job. You can travel the world, you can do many things, earn as much money as people that are going to uni as well. Just ask the member for Barclay, he's always going on about that. So the timing of the facility there certainly aligns perfectly with our government's homegrown territory grant, which we were speaking about yesterday, the $50,000 for first home buyers to build or purchase a new home. And I just want to have a shout out to all of those builders out there. We spoke about AKJ Services that were doing the development out at the new suburb of Ash. We've got great builders right across the territory. My son's actually an apprentice that's working for a great builder in Katherine. So shout out to all of them because they are all people that are contributing to our economy. And it really does, the initiative of that first home owners scheme really benefits local businesses. And that's what we want to make sure that we encourage here in the territory. In addition to that Casuarina campus facility, we announced that the new Trade Training Centre will be established. There's another one, in Katherine as well. We're just working through where that will be at the moment. They also provide vital support for a range of traditional trades, including automotive, heavy diesel. Oh.
Member for Daly, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Mining and Energy. From 1st of July 2026, you're removing the electricity tariff subsidy from every local government council across the territory, which will see massive hikes in their power bills. Minister, have you bothered to engage with the local government sector about these power price hikes or sought advice on the impact it will have on the territory households, given that councils will be forced to either cut services or pass the cost on to their ratepayers?
Minister for Mining and Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I can see why the previous Labor government failed Territorians so badly, Madam Speaker. We're talking about the power rate and the rate of electricity. The Mining Minister doesn't deal with that, Madam Speaker. So I might pass the question to the
Minister for Energy too. So
Minister, you don't have the call, member for Daly. Take your seat. Would you like to say something? What,
I would.
point of order?
Point of order, 110 relevance. I was saying it is relevant to his portfolio. He's the Minister for Energy, so he should be able to answer the question instead of handball it off.
Look, just pause. It is the call of the minister to decide whether the question is appropriate and whether or not the minister wants to hand it over to another minister. So you have the call, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, I can see why the previous Labor government failed Territorians. They cannot get something so simple as who controls the electricity, the power and water, Madam Speaker. So I feel sorry for Territorians, Madam Speaker, who suffered for the last 9 years when this is a classic example of how stupid they are, Madam Speaker. I'll pass to the...
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
No, look.
Oh, you glass jaw. Sit down.
Okay, take your seat. The minister didn't call you stupid. He referred to the Labor Party as stupid, and I think we've all sort of decided that general mildly offensive sort of slurs of political parties is more acceptable than individually slurring someone. So look, in the scheme of things, it's
I will pass
offensive
to the
but not
Treasurer
offensive.
to answer that question.
Sorry?
Sorry, I will pass to the Treasurer to answer that question.
Okay.
I just pointed...
Member for Fong Lim, did you have a point of order? No. Okay. Treasurer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Deputy Leader for passing this on because he's right. Pricing tariffs actually don't sit with the Minister for Energy. They actually sit with the Treasurer, funnily enough, as the shareholding Minister. Go figure. There you go. Shows how much those on the other side actually know. So on the 1st of July 2025, the regulated tariffs under the Electricity and Water Supply and Sewerage Services pricing orders increased by 3%, Madam Speaker, for residential users. And that was under our government. The previous government increased them by 3.9% in 24-25. Funny that. So the Territory's electricity tariffs are currently among the lowest in the country.
Please.
At 3% indexation, and that's lower than the increase in the underlying cost of electricity. That's why we see our CSO increasing. But what we did do with the reform of the electricity pricing orders, which was something that we had to do, otherwise that CSO would have kept increasing, is as a government we provide subsidies for electricity to household and businesses via the CSO. Now, the CSO on average in Darwin households would pay nearly 50% more for electricity than what they actually would. So the government has increased funding for the electricity CSO by around $51.5 million due to the increase in costs of generation. That way that we keep our residential prices at one of the lowest in the country. But for those high users and business users and government, and that includes councils, they will pay cost of generation, Madam Speaker. And that is reflective of the amount of power that they use for any other large commercial customer across the territory, Madam Speaker. So what we've done, we've spoken to councils, we've advised them that the prices will be increasing. We didn't impose this straight away because most councils had already been out and worked out their budget for their rates. So rather than slap them with this, we went out and we've spoken to the council, we've given them the advice that their tariffs will be increasing in line with cost of generation. So we've done the responsible thing, Madam Speaker, and engaged with those stakeholders to advise them that their power will be going up reflective of cost of generation. So those large users will be paying cost of generation, Madam Speaker.
Member for Fong Lim, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Lands, Planning and Environment. Minister, on the 28th of August this year, 2025, you notified me that you've made a decision to rezone lots 7433 and 5988 in Bayview to a new specific use zone. Minister, can you please advise the House of the reasons for this decision, and can you explain how this rezoning will help to bring certainty for residents of Bayview on the future of that suburb?
Minister for Lands, Planning and Environment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Fong Lim, a fierce advocate for his electorate, for the question. Madam Speaker, back in October 2023, the developers lodged a concurrent application to 1. Rezone 2 parcels of land and to 2. Subdivide the land to facilitate a residential subdivision for future house and 2-storey townhouse development. For those not aware of the planning jargon, Madam Speaker, a concurrent application comprises both a planning scheme amendment proposal, rezoning and development proposal in a single application. The concurrent application was subject to public exhibition in 2024 in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act 1999. This gives the public and stakeholders a chance to lodge their submissions. The development facilitated by the application is consistent with the surrounding area and enables the final stage of Bayview to occur. The Development Consent Authority, otherwise known as the DCA, conducted 2 hearings regarding this proposal, including one in which it deferred a decision to seek further information on the subdivision requirements under the Northern Territory Planning Scheme 2020. In response to the Development Consent Authority's request, the developers amended the application. They're listening to the community's concerns, and in April 2025, from traditional Northern Territory Planning Scheme zones, such as low-density residential and low-medium density residential, to a specific use zone. In essence, Madam Speaker, the specific use zone aims to facilitate development consistent with the low-density residential and low-medium density residential zones, which typically include single dwellings and 2-storey townhouse developments. The DCA held a second hearing on the 23rd of May 2025 to consider the matter, and at this hearing it was determined that should the Minister approve the planning scheme amendment proposal, the DCA would likely proceed to approve the associated development proposal, an 18-lot residential subdivision. Once again, Madam Speaker, getting on with delivering for Territorians and getting development happening. As per standard processes, I advise that the planning scheme amendment proposal was approved on the 26th of the 8th, 2025, because I was satisfied that the amendment supported the purpose and objectives of the Act in the following ways. It provided a mechanism to enable the completion of the Bayview residential development in a style and format consistent with earlier stages of the suburb. It ensured that strategic planning reflects the needs and aspirations of the community, guiding the development of future growth areas as identified in the Darwin Inner Suburbs Area Plan. It had merit in establishing a site-specific planning framework to support the development of housing within an identified future development area. The DCA made its decision on the 10th of September 2025, which facilitates The conclusion of the concurrent application and the residential subdivision proposed in the concurrent application will complete the residential subdivision of Bayview. Thank you very much, Member for Fong Lim. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Pleasure. Member for Johnston, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is for the Minister for the Prevention of Domestic Violence. Minister, earlier you were asked when the DV roadmap would be made public. The Chief Minister said on radio yesterday morning that you would be able to answer that question. Can you please tell Territorians what date the DV roadmap will be made public?
Minister for Prevention of Domestic Violence.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Member for Johnston, for the question. Madam Speaker, there's been a massive amount of work being done by the Department of Children and Families and the section specifically related to looking at how we work to address the scourge that is domestic violence in our community, their consultation across the sector, and making sure that we absolutely get the strategy that flows on for the last 3 years of the domestic violence framework right, so that it is absolutely, without question, focused on results, not how many heads they count in terms of what programs are run. So that's a lot of work to do, Madam Speaker, and we have almost completed that work, and the team are finalising everything that they need to make sure that the resources that go into the community, Madam Speaker, actually tell the story of where people can go for assistance, where they can go for help, what our expectations are with those non-government organisations that are receiving very large amounts of money, Madam Speaker, to deliver services that up until now it's been very, very hard to see how we're actually measuring the outcomes on the ground. So we've been very pleased, Madam Speaker, in talking to the organisations who are working alongside the team from Department of Children and Families to see what it is that they need, where the gaps are, where they can actually do things differently, and how we can adjust the agreements with them so that they can be more flexible, so they can actually adjust to the needs of the community, and how they can respond when things are not going well in various spaces in the community. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to take the opportunity to commend the work that's been done by the team from the department in this space, because the resource that is coming out will be valuable to the community, it will be meaningful, it will give really clear information about where to go for help, and most importantly, Madam Speaker, it tells the story that prevention of domestic violence is an issue for every single one of us. It is not for government to fix, it is not for those organisations.
Take your seat, please, Minister. What's your point of order, Member for Johnston?
110 relevance. What date will the roadmap be made public?
Minister.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker, and as I was saying, what will be happening as that work is completed and rolled out in a timely fashion, then people will have resources that are actually meaningful and enable them to actually take on the responsibility in our community for selling the message about what we need to do in the space to reduce the incidence of domestic violence in our community, and every single person will have the opportunity to stand up and be part of the fight against this terrible scourge. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Mulca, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question to the Attorney General. Yesterday I asked a question that you didn't understand. It was not a question about racism review in the police. On page 33 of the Aboriginal Justice Agreement implementation plan, the action plan states, review 10 government agencies in identification systemic racism. I understand that Delhi review was completed. Will the report be made public, and which other agency will be reviewed for systemic racism?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Mulca for clarifying that question yesterday. I did go into quite a bit of detail about it because I was thinking you were referring to the Aboriginal Justice Agreement. So we did take you through that yesterday in quite big detail. So in relation to the reviews that you're talking about, you may very well remember that Labor announced and made a heap of promises around doing a bunch of racism reviews across agencies, and they said how urgent that was to be done.
Silence, please.
But then they sat on that for 3 whole years. They didn't actually do those reviews and that work. So I appreciate the question. The Aboriginal Justice Agreement does have a section in there where we were looking at seeing if there was any systemic racism happening. We have stood up under police all of that work with Leanne Little, the anti-racism strategy and
Opposition
working with
leader.
police. And so there's all of that work happening. So that does continue. The Aboriginal Justice Agreement is an agreement that goes for another 3 years. And so, of course, we continue to do that. It also includes things like more Commissioner for Oaths across Aboriginal communities. It includes the alternatives to custody. It includes the community courts, which includes sentences for that type of arena. So all of that work continues. We've been in government, Madam Speaker, for just under 14 months, and we have delivered in spades in relation to our election commitments, including reducing crime, rebuilding the economy and restoring our lifestyle. And that is a lot of work that had to be done in that first 12 months. So, of course, we're going to continue that work, and that includes the work in the courts, that includes the work in corrections.
Take your seat, please, Minister. What's your point of order, Opposition Leader?
Order 110. The member for Milka clearly asked the Attorney-General, will the report be made public around the Department of Infrastructure Planning and Logistics, now DLI, and when will the next department be chosen for the review?
Minister, you've got the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know that the Labor opposition doesn't like to listen to the answers that are asked of me, but it was the member for Mulca who's asked me this question, and I am answering it, and I still have 1:05 to go. So, Madam Speaker...
You're on a warning, Opposition Leader. Stop the interjections and have some respect. Please continue, Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And before I was interrupted, I was talking about the work of the Aboriginal Justice Agreement and the work that we've done in the last 14 months. So, of course, as Attorney-General, that does sit in my purview, and that's the work that I've been doing. I've been out visiting communities who do have those mechanisms in place and seeing how they work. There is an evaluation piece, which is part of the whole Aboriginal Justice Agreement that is underway, that evaluation piece to make sure that what is being done is working. I look forward to that coming to my office and for me to have a look at it, and it'll include all of the aspects of the Aboriginal Justice Agreement.
Member for Fanny Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the very capable Minister for Trade, Business and Asian Relations. Minister, the Northern Territory's economy was going backwards under the previous Labor government, with budget blowouts and reckless spending. Since coming to government, the CLP members on this side of the House have had a clear goal of rebuilding the Northern Territory economy, creating new and exciting opportunities for all Territorians, including the hundreds of small, medium and large businesses in the Fanny Bay electorate that know that our CLP government has their back. As the Minister for Trade, Business and Asian Relations, can you please inform the House of the work being done to help local businesses grow, encourage local and international investment, and how these approaches are creating economic results right across the Territory?
Minister for Trade, Business and Asian Relations.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Fanny Bay for the question. I know how important small business is to your electorate. 96% of the Territory business is small business, and Fanny Bay is a really good example of the vibrancy of that small business community, and your advocacy for them is fierce, and I thank you for that, and you know, you're to be commended for the support that you're giving them on a day-to-day basis. And Madam Speaker, more generally, we saw under 8 years of the previous Labor government that the Territory economy was going backwards at an alarming rate. There were budget blowouts, reckless spending by those on the other side that left our economy struggling and our budget in total tatters. It's not how you run a family budget, Madam Speaker, and it most definitely is not how you spend taxpayer monies. So spending money you don't have is an economic strategy that can only end one way, and that is in tears. And in the case of the Territory, after 8 long years of Labor, that's exactly what happened, Madam Speaker, a $12 billion deficit and an economy in serious decline. But thankfully, Madam Speaker, Labor has been relegated to the other side of the House, And under the Finocchiaro CLP government, the Territory economy is the fastest growing economy in the country, ranked number 1 for economic growth at 10.2% by the CommSec State of the States report under our government. Commercial construction is up 5.5% and housing finance is up 30.1%, Madam Speaker. How amazing is that? Our government is backing in small business. As I said to the member for Fanny Bay, that is a really critical platform for our government. And the increase in the payroll tax-free threshold gave them room to breathe, an opportunity to grow, to think big, to create jobs and pathways for more Territorians, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and then there's our proximity to Southeast Asia. We have opened the door that was slammed shut by the previous Labor government almost a decade ago, and in just 1 year, I have made delegations to Singapore, Indonesia, Timor-Leste, Malaysia and Japan, where we have been welcomed back, Madam Speaker, with open arms. Investment and trade opportunities for Territory businesses, big and small, are flowing as we work to reclaim the Territory's position as Australia's gateway to Asia. Madam Speaker, we made the commitment to rebuild the Territory's economy, and that is what our government is doing. While there's more to do, we remain laser focused on our goal of making the Territory the best place to do business, and there is no question, Madam Speaker, that under the Finocchiaro CLP government, the Territory's economy future is bright.
Member for Drysdale, what is your question?
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries. I feel he hasn't had a big enough turn today. Minister, the Finocchiaro CLP government has made clear its commitment to action, certainty and security across the Territory, including for our world-class agriculture and primary industries. The Northern Territory's crocodile industry is not only iconic, but also a major economic contributor supporting regional jobs and investment. Can the Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries please update the House on the findings of the recent economic value of the Northern Territory's crocodile industry review and outline how the government is supporting this important industry to grow sustainably and strengthen its role in the Northern Territory economy?
Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Drysdale for the question, and it's because he knows how important economic development in the Northern Territory is. No matter whether it's in the Northern Territory, or the northern part of the Northern Territory, or the southern part of the Northern Territory, or in the member for Drysdale electorate, Madam Speaker, we need to make sure that we grow our economy and we get more jobs and more population here to the Northern Territory, Madam Speaker. And look, Madam Speaker, as part of the Finocchiaro CLP government, we remain focused and laser focused on action, certainty and security for Territorians, Madam Speaker. And as part of that commitment, we are backing the Northern Territory's well-renowned crocodile industry to grow sustainable, create regional jobs and remain a global leader in saltwater crocodile products right across the world. Madam Speaker, crocodiles aren't just an iconic part of the Northern Territory, they power our economy as well, Madam Speaker. The new report estimates the crocodile industry will contribute approximately $151 million in 2025, supporting more than 300 jobs across the Northern Territory, Madam Speaker. I'll say that again, $151 million and 300 jobs across the Northern Territory, Madam Speaker. The economic value of the Northern Territory Crocodile Industry Review was developed with the Crocodile Farmers Association of the Northern Territory and undertaken by Ernst & Young, Madam Speaker, two great organisations that bring out quality work. It outlines the potential growth scenarios that will see the industry contribution rise between $176 million and $243 million by 2035, Madam Speaker. So that shows us, Madam Speaker, that this industry is going to move forward. It's going to grow, Madam Speaker. The crocodile industry is well renowned for its quality, its research partnerships and its responsible farming practices, Madam Speaker. It also curates regional opportunities through Aboriginal partnerships in egg harvesting, habitat conservation and wildlife monitoring, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Crocodile Farmers Association Chairman Mick Burns has said the review confirms the strengths of the sector and its potential growth and its benefit to the Northern Territory. Madam Speaker, the Northern Territory crocodile industry has evolved into a globally recognised, responsible and energy industry demonstrating world best practice in sustainable farming. The report identifies new opportunities through market diversification, investment and innovation branding right here in the Northern Territory, Madam Speaker. It includes expanding into emerging markets in Asia and growing the domestic demand for crocodile products, Madam Speaker. Following the release of the report, our government affirms its commitment to grow the industry, to grow the long-term sustainability of the industry, Madam Speaker, because it brings us jobs. Back to that $151 million, 300 jobs, Madam Speaker. Unlike the previous Labor government who seemed to not care about jobs, this government, Madam Speaker, here to support industries that grow the Northern Territory economy and offer us jobs. Thank you.
Member for Nightcliff, what is your question?
Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 67, I move that the Assembly censures the Deputy Chief Minister for his ongoing aggressive, threatening behaviour in this chamber, primarily to the women on the crossbench. Parliament is a workplace and every member has the right to feel safe and to be safe in carrying out their duties. No member should come to work expecting to be bullied. As elected representatives, we are expected to hold ourselves to the highest standard of conduct. The Deputy Chief Minister's behaviour is not only unparliamentary but fundamentally unacceptable. This motion further notes that the Deputy Chief Minister's pattern of bullying behaviour creates a hostile work environment and has broader implications beyond this chamber. It sets a dangerous precedent for acceptable workplace behaviour across the territory. Violence against women begins with disrespect, intimidation and the normalisation of aggressive attitudes towards women. This Assembly cannot credibly advocate against violence and disrespect towards women while simultaneously tolerating such behaviour within our own ranks. No member of the CLP government can speak with integrity on matters of workplace safety, gender equality or respectful conduct while remaining silent on this matter. I urge the Assembly to call on the Deputy Chief Minister to immediately cease this pattern of behaviour, offer a formal apology and commit to upholding the standards of conduct expected of all members, particularly those in leadership positions. Madam Speaker, just briefly, I stand here with the full support of the crossbench and opposition for this censure motion, and I thank them for that. The threatening behaviour from the Deputy Chief Minister has been ongoing and growing, culminating in him last week inappropriately screaming accusations across the chamber to the member for Johnston. Madam Speaker, the standard you walk by is the standard you accept.
Can I just ask you to pause there?
Yes.
You've given notice of the
Sure.
motion. I now have to ask the government, do you accept this?
I was under the impression that I had time to
No, you present the motion
Sure.
and then the government indicates whether or not they accept this censure motion.
Okay, thank
do
you.
you accept the censure motion? Leader of Government Business?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. No, Madam Speaker. Looking at the motion put forward by the member for Nightcliff, it contains a whole range of allegations, and that's all they are, Madam Speaker, is allegations, unsubstantiated allegations. The behaviour of every member in this chamber, Madam Speaker, is governed and under your authority and in accordance with the standing orders, Madam Speaker. So everything put forward...
Silence, please.
Not one of the issues outlined in this motion, Madam Speaker, have been brought to the attention of the Speaker at any time during the Assembly, and these are clearly unsubstantiated, being put forward today without being raised through a normal process of standing orders to substantiate this behaviour. This is nothing more than baseless allegations with no evidence to support.
Leader of Government Business.
And Madam Speaker, no, we don't accept the censure motion.
So the censure motion is not accepted. We will proceed with question time. Member for Gwadja.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Major Events. Minister, the National Indigenous Music Awards in Darwin and Desert Mob in beautiful Alice Springs are nationally significant events that draw visitors to the Territory each year to showcase our cultural excellence on the national stage. Minister, can you confirm if the National Indigenous Music Awards and Desert Mob have had a reduction in funding?
Minister for Major Events.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Gwadja, because I do love to speak about a good major event. And as we know, we're a government that backs in major events, and it's exactly why we've brought forward, which we'll debate next month, the legislation which allows us to grow our tourism and major events industry by merging the two together, so that literally we can have two powerhouses come together and get more bang for buck. Now, Madam Speaker, what we saw under Labor was unfortunately, tourism hobbling along, often going backwards, less and less visitors coming to the Territory. And even though we had an amazing major events company which was bringing big ticket items to the Territory and attracting people, there was so many avenues where it was just working in a silo on its own. And we really needed for a visitor economy or a destination economy, including all sorts of things, including destinations, including events, and that's why I'm bringing together those two powerhouse teams. And that will allow us, Member for Gorja, to be sure that we can give certainty to all of those different organisations who do amazing events and amazing festivals. As an example, we just did the event funding release last week, Madam Speaker, and we've had places like the Thai Festival, which is a long-standing amazing festival that we have here in Darwin. The Barunga Festival, I believe, was on there. A number of festivals. I can't even remember all of them. There were that many. I don't have the list in front of me, Madam Speaker. But yeah, the Aboriginal Music Awards it's a fantastic event. I've actually been to those awards myself, and it is a really great event. It's an awards. They can apply for event funding as well, and my understanding is that they do. It has been something that we've had for a long time, and I'm really looking forward to seeing for them to continue that process.
What's your point of order, Member for Gwadja?
110 relevance. I do respect the Minister for Major Events' reply. It's a direct question. Can the Minister confirm if there has been a funding reduction for the National Indigenous Music Awards and Desert Mob Festival?
Okay, please continue, Minister. We've got plenty of time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thought I was finished, but I'll just quickly wrap up by saying that those two festivals and awards ceremonies and events are really great events. They can be applied through the event funding. That is a program that continues, and I look forward to seeing that continue.
My apologies. No, sorry, the Minister's now finished. I did not notice that she'd finished. I thought she was sitting down in response to the point of order. So you want a supplementary question? Continue.
Thank
Member
you.
for Gwadja, supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for your leniency there. Minister for Major Events, can you confirm that your government is committed to doing everything they can to keep the National Indigenous Music Awards in Darwin, and that we don't lose an amazing event to the East Coast that celebrates First Nations excellence, culture and music?
Attorney General, Minister for Major Events.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I think our record speaks for us itself. In the last 14 months, we've brought amazing events to the Territory. I mean, you only have to look at the international cricket. It was the CLP that brought that back after 18 or 19 long years. So we are absolutely committed to ensuring that we have events here in the Northern Territory which drives visitors to the Northern Territory, not just for that one event, but for them to stay longer. I mean, look at the AFL Masters Games, Madam Speaker. Those people stayed here for 9 whole days. They played a couple of games of footy. They had a great time, but they also ate in our restaurants, drank in our pubs, and
Take your
went on
seat,
tours.
Minister. What's your point of order, Opposition Leader?
1-0. This question was specifically about the National Indigenous Music Awards.
It was. You can take your seat. Minister, continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And the Leader of the Opposition keeps interrupting everybody wanting to help them over there. They can do their job themselves, Leader of the Opposition. I have just said that our track record speaks for itself. We will try and bring all of the events that are amazing to the Northern Territory.
Member for Wanguri, what is your question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. Minister, residents in my electorate rightly expect access to quality, well-funded health services like the Royal Darwin Hospital Emergency Department or the other hospital services that support them when they face illness or in need of health care. Recently, I've heard commentary around the health funding the Northern Territory receives, and I'm concerned that despite the excellent work of our healthcare professionals, our NT health services are under pressure and facing increasing demand. Minister, what is the funding situation for health when it comes to Commonwealth funding? Are we receiving our fair share? And what is being done to address these issues?
Minister for Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Wanguri for this important question, because I know that she's regularly engaging with me about these issues and has been a tireless advocate for her community. But, Madam Speaker, I can inform her and all the members of this Assembly that it is indeed true that the Territory is underfunded when it comes to Australian government health funding. I think I reflected on this the other day, Madam Speaker, and it may well have been the case that since self-government, Madam Speaker, we have been underfunded. We receive the lowest level of Commonwealth health funding in Australia, in a place where there is a greater need, a population with higher rates of illness, and where we have rates of kidney disease and third world illness at a rate that is, quite frankly, a national crisis. It seems to be something that under the former Labor government of the members for Arnhem and Guadja that wasn't ever really ventilated and never properly highlighted. And I must say I've heard nothing from the member for Daly or the member for Arafura or the member for Nightcliff about this very issue. The Northern Territory receives only 31.9% Commonwealth contribution rate for our public hospital services. This is woefully inadequate and is well below the national average of funding at around 37.5% that other state and territories receive. The result of our low funding creates a recurrent annual shortfall of funding of approximately $200 per annum. And Madam Speaker, which if properly provided by Canberra would go a long way to addressing the structural funding deficit faced by NT Health every year. Madam Speaker, not only are we short-funded $200 million a year, but NT Health also step in to pay for and deliver services every year to the tune of around $186 million for health services that are the responsibility of the Commonwealth Government in areas such as aged care, primary health care in remote communities and aeromedical retrieval services for top-end patients. All up, 386 million, I should say, per annum shortfall, which we cannot abide and we cannot allow, Madam Speaker. And this CLP government will be relentless in holding Canberra to account so that they step up, deliver on the needs of NT residents and properly fund our health services. Madam Speaker, the Northern Territory deserves nothing less. And it's high time, Madam Speaker, that we heard from those opposite pointing out where this shortfall is, because we've heard absolute crickets from the members over this side of the chamber about the shortfall in health funding here in the Northern Territory. This has been going on for years, Madam Speaker, and it's high time they got on board. It's high time that the member for Solomon got on board and started advocating for more funding for the Northern Territory. Madam Speaker, thank you, and I move that any further questions be placed on the written notice paper.